Para tirarse a dormir.
¿Algo más? ¿Tu nombre?
Karen.
Karen. ¿Qué pensás?
Vale, si os vais sentando. Bueno, egunon, ta ongi etorri aurtengo Donostiako zinemaldiko prentsaurreko berrira. Gaurko prentsaurrekoan el
Thank you very much and welcome to this press conference. We'll have the film, The Substitute, as I was saying, where it's in the official section this year. We have with us today most of the technical and artistic team. If we start from the end, RENATA LERMAN, who's an actress, MARÍA MERLINO, actress, JUAN MINUJÍN, actor, Diego LERMAN, director of the film, ALFREDO CASTRO, actor, Barbara LENNIE, actress, and NICOLÁS, AVRUJ, who is the producer. We've just seen the film, and I was thinking, and I'd like to start with a question, and I'll give the floor to the other journalists. I would like to know how the film responds to a subgenre, so to speak, of high school. There are a lot of series that deal with subjects of high schools, like, for example, US films or other sorts of productions, which have a different approach. And here, however, it's more with, feet on the ground, so to speak. It talks, I don't know whether it talks about the educational problems as it represents the characters in a very different way. Characters who are in a crisis situation. There's this genre, and the film also merges with a police thriller, which is quite curious. I was very interested how the story and the script was constructed for the film. Hi, everyone. Well, the script started from the proposal of Juan Vera, who's here with us today, sitting down. And it's a proposal of working with a story of a teacher in the urban area of Buenos Aires, and there was research that we carried out. I researched it once again, and then Maria May, Luciana de Mello, in different stages of writing the script. And that was the challenge, as I say, with that world that we encountered. That was where the film was, and what film we wanted to make at the end of the day. The idea of working from the police sort of police standpoint, that was to have a certain theory of what a police genre was like from a literature standpoint, and the police would come in through the door, and the film would transform into that, or at least part of the film would transform into that. So therefore, the approach was from the character of the main character of the substitute of Lucio, who is portrayed by Juan, and then the different edges that forms part of this character who's going through a middle-age crisis, his relationship with his father, with his ex-wife, his daughter, and the classroom, the school, and then how he goes into school when he meets this other teacher, Clara, and the relationship with the rest of the teachers, and the student, Dylan, who he sees the need of getting involved with him. Well, in the research work, we saw that the teachers were getting involved or not, and that was a specific dividing line between getting involved beyond your teaching work of giving a class or lesson with the reality that those teachers were living in, and those students as well. So that's the barrier that we have to overcome, that Lucia's character comes from another world, of a more academic world, that albeit he does have a father who works there, he doesn't belong to that, to play that role, and how the role between father and son is described, Alfredo's character. There's something about a legacy, of a farewell, and then the idea, like almost a football-like, playful-like, of going from a substitute to being a player of the first 11. And all of those jigsaw puzzles, and there were different elements in the writing of the script, different versions of the script, and we wanted to find the balance between the classroom and the most family factor, personal factor, and the different plots. It's not an ensemble piece, but there is an ensemble pass of how to amalgamate all of the different subplots, which was quite a challenge, and to find a way so that they could all flow together and converge. Please raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Victoria from Tramifundo. I was very moved by the film. I've run out of words, and I had to write them down on this piece of paper. But the film achieves something as difficult, not only as how to transferring and moving into the environment of vision of fiction, but it reminds you of your experiences with your parents and being at high school when you were a child. What's the role? What energy makes you create this entire universe that you portray in the film? Well, thank you very much. I'm very glad that you were very moved by the film. I'm not sure. The truth, it's a film that was very difficult to plan, to make it, and there was an enormous amount of faith, at least from my side of things. I'm not sure that there was a need almost of telling something, this story, and make these characters visible, as I said before, who are the teachers in those spheres. But there's also a more intimate side to it. I think the specific element was was being hard-headed and an enormous amount of silent faith that we had, that I wanted to make the film, and then everyone that came along and supported the film, and the spirit which is almost contagious amongst us all, that formed part of the film. It was difficult because of different aspects, but obviously COVID and even the shooting of the film made all of this difficult. But the truth is that there was an enormous motivation, not only our own, but a generalized enthusiasm. And as the character of Rita Cortese says, that it was worthwhile. Just as simple as that, we all felt that it was worthwhile making. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and we'll give you the microphone. If not, I would like to address something else that you said at the beginning. It's not an ensemble piece per se, but all of the actors do play a very important role within the plot. Several of them have worked with you before. I'm thinking about Bárbara with Una Especie de Familia, and María en La Casa, and De Repente Otros, like Juan y Alfredo. In these films, Renata, I think it's the first time she worked with the director, but I think that you knew each other beforehand. Yes, on occasions we have met. I'm not sure whether the actors can also explain what their experience has been when confronting this complicated and complex, but beautiful, but complicated and complex film. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. The truth is that the process was very interesting. The script, at least for me, I liked it very much. The scope and the character and the different layers that the character had. From the personal process, the character with the father and his daughter, and with his ex-wife or partner, and the context that the film has of education as a space of social contention, especially in very precarious neighborhoods where drug trafficking enters and penetrates, and a space like a school which has the tools of words and reading are invaded by the security forces, by the police plot that Diego talked about. But the process was very beautiful because Diego has done a lot of theater, and he has the capacity of understanding the actors and actresses, which is very permeable, very good, and very aware of where things were going, where things are going, not rigidly, but in this part of the film, the work with all of the actors, that is to say, with all of the teenagers who were not professional actors, the casting process was very long to be able to set up this group of actors. And with Diego, every day we were in the classroom, which was several weeks, where we were shooting all of that part of the film. We were looking to see what we were going to confront and to try to, apart from what was written in the script, to try to be as loose enough to be able to improvise and to find how the film breathed beyond the classroom. So it was a very interesting process from an acting standpoint, in that sense. It's like in the Oscars to tell you to stop talking. That's why the alarm just rang. The other actors, if they would like to contribute something, yes. Well, hello. Thank you very much. First of all, I rescue the amount of the stories that this film has, which goes from sexuality to the most political and deep politicism, what's happening in our country with the arrival of drug trafficking, micro-trafficking, the large drug trafficking, the way in which they access to the most vulnerable parts of society, of the population. It hooked me straight away. I found that it was a script that was worthwhile making very much. And there's a phrase of my character says, "No one saves themselves on their own," which is very beautiful. But it has to do a lot of the times we're living in with a lot of egotism and all of individuality. And I would hope this would happen in the world where, to a certain extent, to achieve more solidarity, which is necessary, to break away from the selfie photos and be more pluralistic or more plural. Apart from this, working with these marvelous actors and actresses is very important because movies are individual. We all make films. Diego loves actors and actresses. So therefore, the degree of freedom of the script was very important and very good, and a lot of improvisations which emerged at the same time. And in particular, a type of character which is much more noble than what I'm normally used to portraying, or that I've been told to portray, but I enjoyed it very much. The experience was beautiful, marvelous. Hi, good morning. I rescue what you were talking about, the latter thing that you mentioned, that has to do with what you say of making films in a community. Films have to do with creating a family and making this and finding Diego's family again, who I had met quite a few years ago. It's a type of family, and Nico also. It was a very demanding film and very beautiful, and it marked my career very much. When Diego called me again once, it made me feel delighted. I was delighted. He proposed that I participate in this story, which interests me for many reasons that have already been mentioned, and especially this idea that one is an actor or an actress, and you have the good fortune of meeting people who shape and readdress your own personal journey in a certain way. You create identities according to the films that you make in a certain way, so to speak. And I like that my identity was formed part of this film, and that's why I'm here today. No, that's okay, I don't mind. My question is mainly for the actors, so therefore, above all, congratulate you, because I think the story is beautiful, and as you've mentioned, it has a lot of layers and a lot of issues that you intertwine. not only isolated in one specific plot. It stemmed from research and how the script was developed. How, once you incorporate the actors of research and to incorporate all of those plots to the characters and the story, how is that done? I leave it open to whoever wants to answer. How we do everything, basically, so to say. Well, at least part of it. The big challenge when you start to think about, specifically about the film, it has to do with exactly how to incorporate that world. There was a certain area, full area, that what we mentioned before, the students, finding the students that bring about their own universe because they came from those places. And then, on the other hand, the teachers, or the majority, at least the character of Maria, they were all teachers that on the day-to-day, they do teach their, and how to amalgamate this with the characters Juan and Alfredo, how all of that was constituted at the end of the day. The truth is, the answer is, I'm not sure, it was quite natural. Talks, meetings, getting together. There was a period with Juan. We went to see some of the lessons or classrooms. And then apart from the specific research that everyone does, but as a whole, with Alfredo, he came along, we showed him. Alfredo was more, it came from a different perspective, but we saw the dining room and we talked about, and we talked together, and also rehearsers talking about the prehistory, shall we say, or the background. When I talk about prehistory, I say what's in the story, but where they come from, their background, and how each character was constructed. The same with Barbara's character, and these partners or ex-partners. In the case with Maria, it was get together with this group of teachers. So therefore, these were meetings with those teachers, small rehearsals and discussions and debates. She went to see some lessons as well in classrooms. And with Rennie, it was a great challenge. It was beautiful for me. Renata is my daughter, our daughter. And the truth is, to share a film with her was something which was marvelous. I was a bit afraid initially making the decision, and then the truth is it was something beautiful. The days that were most nervous during the shoot was when Renee was there. I would like to add that for me, that was the biggest challenge for me, as an actress, was to share with the real teachers, those scenes with the real teachers. And my fear was that you could notice that I'm not a teacher, and that fear disappeared because it was quite natural how I incorporated myself with them. And Diego's invitation of meeting, sometimes improvise and rehearse, listen to them, observe them in their classrooms. And I'm left with those teachers, the great majority of them, that in those schools, with very few resources, with children that come from families that have a lot of needs. These are teachers, they put a lot of themselves beyond the content and the subjects they teach. And there are a line of containment and escape for these children, boys and girls, who are very lonely and on their own, and school is very important for them. And I was able to see and get close to these teachers who are truly, because that's their vocation, and that was marvelous. And also, what surprised me are these students, their acting level was quite incredible. To see them in action. So I'm very happy of presenting the film here and very proud at the same time. Thank you. I think what's very interesting, the line between a documentary and fiction, a film, that Diego manages to achieve, which I think is genius, because we all had to confront the children in the readings that we did. And when we call them natural actors, what does it mean to be a natural actor? Being a natural is when you've never studied, but they ask and demand from you a level of will and naturalness and spontaneity as well, of giving your all, which is very beautiful. When we were reading with the children and we were reading with Juan, and they were very enthusiastic. And this is what you're going to do. Well, that's the way it's done. And I found that, yes, film and art makes so that people can change their destination or their destiny. But that meeting between fiction and documentary, I think, is much closer and much more beautiful at the same time. We have a time for one final question. Thank you. A question from Brazil. I'm from Rio de Janeiro. For Rodrigo Fonseca, for Diego. It's difficult when we see a film, a realism is social in Latin America, in this between a documentary and fiction, that frontier, we see the use of word which is poetic. And I think I saw in your film the use of words, not only because of a character who's a teacher, a literature teacher, but all the dialogues have a look which is very poetic. I would like you to understand a bit more how you carried out the process in writing the script, taking advantage of the question about the using of words. For Alfredo Castro, I always like the way in which you use silence in your portrayals. What's the dramatic use of silence in your work as an actor? No, well, I was discussing whether the teachers should be a literature teacher or not, or another subject. Choosing a literature teacher, that he had written a novel, and he taught literature, and he talked about poetry, and he read poetry. I think the poetic dimension, I'm not too sure whether you're referring to this, but it had to do with to reflect upon language. What is language nowadays when he say that it's standardized? And above all, what is what we call poetry, whether it's in something comes from the academic world, and he talks about consecrated poets, and what he sees all of a sudden is his capacity to see that poetry all of a sudden is in the bar, the boy who improvises a song in the middle of a class. So therefore, I'm not sure whether it answers your question, but beyond, more than the poetry is the poet, what's poetic, instead of being a place, it's being in the disposition of seeing what's poetic wherever you are in the world. There's a bit of that which the character addresses, Lucio's character, and which is addressed in the film. I think all actors and actresses, we use silence much more than words. The first thing, because to read the script and to start delete things which are superfluous, one starts to learn that scripts are written so that the juries can understand what is being done, but the degree of freedom that we had was enormous. Yes, and I think that I debate better in silence than using words. I like it much more. Thank you very much. Okay, well, with this reflection, unfortunately, we have to finish here. And to tell you, the film, there's a moment we say, for who we write poetry for, I ask what we make films for. But today, at least, for all of the people in San Sebastian, and I hope your film goes very, very well in the official screening. A round of applause for the entire team. Thank you.